Oh, welcome to the Gambling Gauchos. I'm Rob Rowe. He's Kyle Jacobson. We are live in the Stretch Lab studio. Don't just stretch, get stretched. We are also coming to you with the Payne Paltrud and Chandler rundown. And that looks like this today. We're going to see where some transfers have landed out of Texas Tech. We're going to take a brief overview of the depth chart brought to you by Don Williams via Joey McGuire. And then we'll get right into the Matador Transit Brightline Marketing mailbag as we move forward. Of course, as always, we'll keep you here on YouTube and the Republic of Football through the first half, and then kick you off to the Patreon-only mailbag as we move through. Kyle, how you doing, man?
Pretty good. Sorry, I'm running late. It seemed like there's people doubting that we would record tonight. I'm not sure why that was the case, but we're here. Never a doubt. And Nate, your boy in Collin County, he was like, "You guys haven't recorded in a week." Like, well, yeah, it's a weekly podcast, so that's about the cadence we're shooting for.
Right.
So we're not late. We're right on track. So the haters can just stay mad about it.
That's right. All right, so the Texas Tech transfer class has been talked about a ton as we've gone through, talked about David Bailey, Romello Heights on the defensive line, obviously Lee Hunter, and the other two defensive tackles, Skylar Gell Howard and Anthony Holmes, plethora of cornerbacks, including Bryce Pollock, and obviously the offensive line, running backs, wide receivers. We've talked about all those. We'll talk about them more and more. But I kind of want to put to rest some of the guys who've left as we try to figure out where they are and what they're doing. A couple of ACC transfers. Or I'd say I'm not ranking these. I have them alphabetically, but I'm not ranking these like biggest contributors who have left. But I do think it kind of naturally goes that way. The ACC transfers Joseph Adedire to NC State. Then you have Jordan Sanford to Cal, defensive back, and Nick Fadig to Stanford, who had not played much yet, but I think he was one of the guys we've looked at as kind of an up-and-comer on the offensive line. Two players, Kyle, went to Michigan State. Your boy, Devin Cromwell from Guelph University, and Isaac Smith was a Matt Wells transfer. Kind of was injured in the years he was supposed to break out. Never really got going here at Texas Tech, though he did flash. So both those players to Michigan State. And then the only other Power 4 transfers would be Ty Buchanan to Arizona, Dalton Merriman to Houston, two Big 12ers, and one SEC transfer, your favorite offensive lineman, Sterling Porsche to Vanderbilt. The rest of the schools, Cameron Brown to Georgia State, Jordan Brown to Nevada, Brady Boyd, Utah State, Harvey Dyson, Tulane, LJ Johnson Jr., wide receiver, Texas State, Trayvon McAlpine, Tulane. So a couple to Tulane there on the defensive line. Sammy Morris to ACU, Jalen Peoples to North Dakota State, FCS, Dylan Shaw to North Texas, offensive lineman, and Miles Thompson, another wide receiver, to NIU. Now, when you hear that full list, A, does anything stand out on the landing spots? And B, do you feel like you had anyone get away?
So I think first things first, this is probably stating the obvious, but anybody who moved down a level to either Group of Five or FCS, I think you just say like, yeah, there was no spot for them here. Wish them luck. I don't consider that a loss unless you're just looking at it from like a depth standpoint. And ideally you'd be 12 deep at every position, but the scholarship and roster limits are such that you can't really do that. So you can have some good players like Nehemiah Martinez was a contributor here. He was a good depth piece. He went to ACU. So I'm not saying that like it's nothing to lose guys to that level, but I don't think that you were like inviting anybody to stay, recruiting them to stay, and they left for Utah State or ACU. Where it gets a little trickier are the Power Four transfers. Like Joseph Adedire going to NC State. That's kind of a weird one because their program, I would say, is very much on par with yours. Like you're in a similar stature conference. I don't know what they're doing in terms of NIL, but that's a weird one to judge because he didn't play last year because he was hurt. And so to me, it seems more likely that we moved off of him and that if we were competing head to head with NC State for a guy, especially one that was already here, I think given all the advantages you have now with NIL, you're probably keeping that guy if you really want him. Michigan State, Vandy, Stanford, those are, in my opinion, like a pretty legitimately attractive destination where maybe you have a guy that's upset about playing time. Maybe we had a guy that we did want to keep, and he said, well, I want a degree from Stanford or Vanderbilt or whatever. I don't think, though, there's anybody that stands out to me like 2 cycles ago when you lost Monroe Mills. And on one hand, the fans were like, well, he's a bum, our O-line stunk. But then you look at the recruiting ranks, it's like, well, he's a 4-star transfer. A lot of schools are after him. And then you see what you replace him with, the guy from Mid-Tennessee State with worse PFF grades. And it's like, well, I wish we had Monroe Mills. I don't feel like you lost anybody that you didn't immediately then upgrade in the portal. So, yes, would it have been great to keep a Joseph Adedire, Nick Fadig for depth purposes? I think so. Like, I wouldn't mind having those guys number 2 or number 3 on the depth chart, playing maybe 20, 25% of snaps. But I don't think that you lost like a primary starter at a position of need like you did with Monroe Mills, maybe even like Tyler Shuck, just because he was another Power 4 starter at his respective position. It doesn't seem like you lost that caliber of player this cycle. And if there was an argument that you did lose a player roughly in that realm or caliber, you clearly upgraded in the portal, in my opinion, with all the talent that you brought in. So not to put too fine a point on it, I think anybody who we really, really, really wanted to stay, we could have made them stay. And some of these were probably mutual decisions like, hey, you deserve more playing time. You can get it more at this other school. So it doesn't seem like there was much heartburn about anybody who left at the end of the day. And to any extent that there was, it was immediately mitigated by the transfer class that you brought in.
Yeah, if I would name 2 names that I'd be like, yeah, I really want those guys to stay if they can, it'd be Adedire and Isaac Smith, which I think plays out because they both went Power 4, one to NC State and Michigan State. But again, would you rather have those 2 or David Bailey and Romello Height? I think probably Romello Heights, you probably could go 1-1 with a couple of those guys, but David Bailey is, we think of him so much more highly. So I think you lost a lot, but I think you needed to, A, because of how many you brought in, B, because the roster limits changed, and then C, I think you just needed to be better, and I think you are.
Agreed.
All right, let's go to the depth chart. Now, this was published on LubbockOnline.com from our favorite journalist, Don Williams. And he set it up as this is from Joey McGuire. So he sat down, I guess, with Joey McGuire, put out this depth chart. And we'll start with the outside receiver, the X. Reggie Virgil is the starter. Going down from there, Micah Hudson, number 2. Tyson Turner and Leighton Stone from Friendship. That is a senior, sophomore, redshirt freshman, true freshman. You just stop me if you want to jump in. The other outside receiver.
Real quick off the top, anything Joey says in June, you know how I feel about that. So happy to entertain this as if it's reality, but I take it with a grade of slaw. Kind of thought Caleb Douglas played the X. I guess he played to the Z, so I'll let you go ahead.
And especially in the offensive line, I've got more to say about what you just said, so we'll get there. Wide receiver Z, Caleb Douglas, TJ West, Price Morgan, the three names.
Okay. Oh, I'm not feeling great about our depth at outside receiver so far. I think the number one guy's great. Behind that, not a whole lot proven.
That goes to slot receiver, Coy Aiken, Roy Alexander, 100 catch guy at his last school, Kelby Valson, and Price Morgan again.
Okay. I'm curious about Coy Aiken in the slot. I think I've mentioned this on the podcast before. If I asked you to envision like 3 different highlight plays from Coy Aiken over the last 2 seasons and what route he ran on those plays, like what are his 3 best routes?
Back shoulder fade. Go.
Yep.
And maybe the dig against Cincinnati.
Yeah. He made hay on 3rd and 6, just running like a 5-yard slant a bunch. I don't know if he caught a lot of passes that weren't back shoulder, go, or 5-yard slant.
Yeah.
So I'm a little curious, him in the slot having to run a little more sophisticated route tree, running through a little more traffic, probably some more option routes. I'm curious what that looks like. I'm not saying he can't do it, but he hasn't been asked to do it yet, at least. So I'll be curious how he works out in the slot. I probably would have, I don't know, maybe experimented with. And I'm not in practice, obviously. I don't know the talent nearly as well as the coaches, but his skill set seems better for the outside. I might have tried to give Virgil or Hudson some run at inside, but we'll see. It may work out beautifully. Who knows?
Well, they went and got Roy Alexander after spring, and so it looked like they assessed a depth issue and went and got an inside receiver. So we'll see what happens there. My assumption is that when you're in fall camp, Coy and Reggie will be the X, and Caleb and Micah Hudson or whoever else will be the Z. But that's just me. I don't know. All right, let's go to tight end. John Carlos Miller first. Terrence Carter, you might know him as 6'2", 247 from Texas Tech.
Beefy boy. All right.
Put on 8 pounds since he went to Texas Tech here.
Because he was 239 when he came in.
Yeah. Jason Llewellyn and Trey Jackson. So that's senior, junior, freshman. Redshirt out of South Oak Cliff.
I wonder, I remember doing kind of a deep dive on the Mac Leftwich stats for all of his offenses when he was announced as the hire. Haven't done much film stuff. I wonder if he would be open to running 2 tight end personnel, because I don't know how I feel about like tight end 3 and lower, but if you're trying to get John Carlos Miller and Terrence Carter on the field at the same time, and you don't feel great at the same time about your slot receiver talent, maybe you could line them up like one in the slot, one on the line. But I wonder if he's got any like 12 personnel packages, and if we might see some of that versus traditional slot receivers. I think Terrence Carter is probably going to emerge as the starter, or at least the primary snaps getter. I don't know if this is a Joey thing or what, but he seems to kind of have a philosophy of transfers that come in, maybe like moving them up the depth chart a little bit slower. Because I remember, like, I think Jalen Conyers was second, or maybe even third on the depth chart last spring. He was injured, granted, but even when we got to fall camp, he was still not listed as a starter. I was like, okay, he's clearly tight end 1. He may not take the first snap of the first game of the season. So it may kind of be shaping up that kind of deal with Terrence Carter.
Yeah, and I think at tight end, it's if you come out in this personnel, or this formation, it's this guy. If you're in another formation, it's the other guy.
Yeah.
Quarterback: Baron Morton, Will Hammond, Mitch Griffiths, Lloyd Jones, Chuba. And then running back, Quentin Joyner, Jacoby Williams, Cam Dickey, Adam Hill. If you remember him. I
Yeah,
think most
Adam
of the
Hill,
names.
he's kind of like a Cam Scattaboo, Toby Gerhart kind of guy.
Yeah, Lunch Pail.
Yeah,
Yeah. I will start at
kind of
left
has some
tackle
Jack
now.
Welch to him.
No, he was an aspect. Uh, in a few of these, especially at left guard, I think there is a this guy did not practice all spring. He's second. So we'll keep that in mind. We'll go with left tackle. Howard Sampson, Jacob Ponton, Deanthus Upshaw Jr. That is junior out of UNC, redshirt freshman at left tackle. Left guard, Will Jados, 6'7", 310 senior out of Miami, Ohio.
Tall
Vinny
guard.
Scurry, second left guard. Connor Carty, true freshman, third left guard. Center Sheridan Wilson, Cash Cleveland, Holton Hendricks. Cash joined after the spring. Right guard, Davian Carter, Daniel Sill, Patrick McBath. That is a senior, an extra senior, a sophomore, and a true freshman. At right tackle, Hunter Zambrano, the FCS All-American Jacob Ponton, again, at right tackle. He's a swing tackle. And Ellis Davis, both redshirt freshmen there, Ponton and Davis. So I'm interested to see if Cash Cleveland maybe breaks into the guard or Sheridan Wilson moves to guard. And then if Vinny Scurry wins that job back, being healthy in the fall.
Yeah, I think I could be wrong. I think I remember Davion Carter getting a few reps at center, at least in practice, or listed as the backup center last year, something like that. So I feel like you have a lot of mobility on the interior because I don't know. There was also talk of like flipping Sheridan Wilson out to guard. So if you wanted to have Cash Cleveland start at center, so all that to say, probably a lot of moving pieces on the interior. Sounds like the two tackle spots are pretty well locked down with a third swing tackle, like you said, in Ponton. But I'll be curious how things shake out on the interior. I guess the first domino is who's the starting center, and then depending on that, does one of the other guys who loses the center battle win one of the guard spots? But yeah, Vinny Scurry had the real bad, I guess, an ankle or foot injury against Wazoo, and we never saw him again. I guess that carried over into spring as well. But I think that's a good problem to have. It sounds like if everybody were healthy, you'd have at least one solid backup at both tackle spots that you would trust, and at least two or three extra guys on the interior that you could theoretically move around and have a lot of depth there as well. So, and I think if Davion Carter was the starter, I wouldn't have any qualms about that. I don't think he's um, like above replacement value, but I think he easily holds his own in this conference and is a spot you don't have to worry about either. Like I don't know if he's a strong point on the offensive line, but especially in pass pro, I trust him to not give up sacks and blown assignments. So if he's one of the starting five, I could live with that, especially if you've got some plus talent elsewhere. And if he gets beaten out, almost like even better, that means somebody else is better than just holding their own. So I think it's really good to have healthy competition, and you've just come a long way since like it's no shade at any uh, guy or group of guys, but there was a time where you would take in an FCS transfer and he was an automatic starter on the offensive line. And now you do have Hunter Zambrano. He's an FCS guy, but he was like getting some NFL draft buzz, FCS All American type. And to hold that spot, he's going to have to beat out two guys that were four stars coming out of high school 2 years ago. So all that to say, I think you've got quality depth like you haven't had in quite some time.
Yeah, I think there are years you had two or three, maybe four quality Big 12 starters on the offensive line. You need five. I think you got six right now, with Ponton maybe being seven.
Well, again, look at some of the guys that you had a guy who, I'll say, had to start last year who wound up at Vanderbilt. Another guy who started several games who transferred to an in conference rival. And so, again, like those were guys that weren't going to be in the top eight here, that other Power Four schools, other Big 12 schools are probably bringing in to compete for a starting spot.
Yeah.
So I think that tells you like how much. And then you brought in from a Big 12 opponent their freshman All-American, their starter, and he may not even win the job here. So I think that says a little bit about where you're at relative to your peers in the conference.
All right, let's flip to defense. Field outside linebacker. David Bailey, Charles Esters, Braylon Rigsby, Eddie Smith. Senior, sophomore, freshman redshirt. You move into nose, Lee Hunter, Jaden Cofield, Keyshawn Williams. And that is a true senior, true sophomore redshirt freshman. Jaden Cofield got enough snaps last year to not be able to redshirt. The other defensive tackle, Skylar Gill Howard, senior. AJ Holmes, Anthony Holmes, junior, transfer, and Duda Banks, also a senior, injured last year, 6'5", 300. The other end, Romello Height, senior, Terrell Tillman, senior, Cheeto Feely, freshman redshirt, and Dylan Spencer, sophomore. And I thought he was in the portal, but I guess he's back.
I can't remember, to be honest with you, but he's another one that I think was slated to be your starter last year before he got hurt. So you said that last one, it's Romello Height, and then who?
Terrell Tillman.
Okay, then who?
O'Feely.
Interesting. Okay.
Last year. And then Dylan Spencer.
Yeah, so I don't think Dylan Spencer is fourth string there. I think once he's healthy, he'll be higher than that.
Yeah.
But again, if he is, that shows you how much improvement there's. Like he was number 1 out of fall camp last year, and now he might be number 4 at that spot. You got an old front four, at least your starters. David Bailey is a true senior. I think the other guys might be in year like 4, 5, 6, depending on COVID and redshirt stuff. They might have close to 20 years combined of college experience on that front four.
Yeah.
So that's, to me, that's noteworthy.
All right, middle linebacker, Ben Roberts, Bryce Ramirez, Wesley Smith. Will linebacker, the boundary inside linebacker, Jacob Rodriguez, John Curry, Trent Lowe. Anybody missing there for you?
No, I feel really good about the two deep there. Bryce Ramirez, old experienced player. He's played inside and outside. And John Curry flashed a little bit toward the end of last year. So I think if either one of them were thrust into action, you'd be okay there. Ben Roberts, very curious, like what version do we get? We've seen a very good version and a very not so good version. Super excited about Jacob Rodriguez. To me, he's like the defensive equivalent of what Taj was going into last year. Just super dependable, super productive guy. You know exactly what you're going to get, and you're just hoping and praying he stays healthy all year because he's going to be the leader and the focal point on that side of the ball. But so yeah, I feel mostly good about the starters. Again, curious about Ben Roberts, but good about the depth there as well.
All right, what about Mike Dingle? Where's he?
Is he at whatever we're calling star now?
Yes, he is. He's playing the star, which I think means Shield Woods do what? That's what it says.
Are we still calling it star?
That's what Don Williams is calling it.
Okay.
So AJ McCarty's number 2 there. Mike Dingle's the starter. And then from Lubbock, Marcus Ramon Edwards is the 3-man. So where's Brendan Jordan? Well, Brendan Jordan is playing strong safety because Chapman Lewis hurt his knee in the bowl game. He will not be back until mid-year or later, and they're going to Jacob Rodriguez him. So he has a red shirt available. He will redshirt and play 4 games in the regular season at the back end of this year, and then potentially any bowl game or whatever as you move into the later half. So that is at strong safety. Brendan Jordan, Oliver Miles, Peyton Morgan, and then Chapman Lewis is listed, but he'll be the starter likely when he comes back. And then the free safety, Cole Wisniewski, Malika Skara, and Luke Dillingham.
So backing up to star, I'm super curious about that, or just intrigued, because from what we've seen from Dingle and AJ McCarty, their games are so different. And this position might be a little different in Shield Woods' defense, but McCarty to me was a coverage guy. Like he was a corner that was playing star, basically. Um, his stature is very different than Mike Dingle's. Mike Dingle's a linebacker who's playing star, and Mike Dingle was a really, really effective pass rusher. He wasn't used in that capacity a lot. So you've got one kind of like coverage DB and one pass rushing linebacker playing the same spot. I'll just be curious what that looks like. Wonder if Brendan Jordan, when he was playing the star, was kind of a little bit out of position. I wonder if he'll be better suited at strong safety. And then Cole Wisniewski at free safety. Again, a bit of a wild card because he was hurt all of last year, but going into last year was viewed as like one of the best players in FCS, an NFL draft prospect, all that good stuff. He's also a converted linebacker for whatever that's worth. He played linebacker for 2 or 3 years at North Dakota State. I'm pretty sure they moved him to safety. He has like 10 picks. It was just a natural at it. So both of your deep safeties are guys that have played linebacker like a hybrid before, which makes me think they can hit. They're going to be bigger than some other safeties in the league. Not afraid to come up and help in the run defense. But I think the big question with this whole unit, though, is pass coverage, because you were among the very worst in the country last year defending the pass. Hate that Chapman Lewis's injury was that severe, because he flashed at times, and like he had the pick at Wazoo. Just seemed like a guy who was good at playing that kind of center field safety spot. So, yeah, both safeties a bit of a wild card to me. One because he's coming off injury and moving up from FCS. The other because it's not the position we've seen him play his first 2 years on campus. I think their collective performance could kind of swing the pendulum on how good the overall defensive unit is or not.
All right, let's say it's first down here, Kyle. You're trying to run the ball. 6'3", 250, 6'4", 325, 6'1", 290 athlete, 6'3", 235. Your linebacker, 6'3", 235, 6'1", 230. The star, 6'2", 220. And then up the middle, your safeties, 6'4", 220, and 6 foot, 210.
So the smallest guy is 210.
Yeah.
You better be able to run like outside zone with a fast running back who's faster than all of our guys. Because like,
Faster than Dingle. Run away from him.
like let's just say that you block Lee Hunter and SGH perfectly, and you get to the second level. Like you're going to run through Jacob Rodriguez. Let's say you do that. It's like I'm skeptical at this point. And then there's two safeties that both weigh 220 waiting for it. Like I don't know if you can run through us, so you better be able to run around us. That's what I would do. Both of our edges are not super heavy, but that's good. Like I mean, I would rather try to defend the run out on the perimeter than just have somebody that can run up the gut on you over and over. I mean, we saw countless cliff defenses and all that that couldn't do a damn thing about teams just running for 8 yards right up the gut. Um, so yeah, it's a tough task, especially if you've got some 175-pound slot receiver, 185-pound running back that you're trying to block those safeties, that star, those linebackers with. Um, that's not going to be an easy task. But then I also think our defensive front lining up against anybody's opposing offensive line is going to have an advantage. So, especially in the run defense, when it comes to size and mass, you might have an advantage at all three levels, which is pretty exciting.
And I wonder, going back to the star before we get to the corners, if Mike Dingle is the star and then A.J. McCarty's the nickelback, but it's just one spot on the roster. If it's third and long, McCarty's in there. If it's a run down, it's Dingle.
Yeah, there were definitely times when McCarty and Jordan shared the field last year. Um, that was something I was hoping Ben Roberts would improve on from 23 to 24 was his pass coverage. Maybe you take him off the field and play with two stars instead of two inside linebackers on 3rd and 9 or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know, but yeah, I think if you're willing to get creative with personnel, you could certainly add to your advantage on 3rd down as well.
Are the corners Bryce Pollock, Dante Balfour, Terrian Grant on one side, Mo Horn, Amir Boyd, Macho Stevenson, and Ashton Hampton on the other. So the first four corners, Bryce Pollock, Dante Balfour on one side, Mo Horn, Amir Boyd from UTEP on the other.
So on that first side, your starter is a productive SEC transfer.
Yeah, top 10 SEC PFF grade.
His backup is a super productive all-around athlete from the Group of 5 level.
With
And
also Power 5 experience, yeah.
yeah, was recruited and mentored by an NFL corner. And then their backup, third string, is a former 5-star out of high school.
Uh-huh.
So good blend there of experience, production, and talent. Feel great about that corner spot. The other one, Mo Horn, I think I've been higher on him than most fans. I think if you look at his numbers when he was targeted, they lie a little bit because the play that stands out to me, he's in great coverage against Wazoo, tips the pass, and the receiver catches it on a deflection for like a 25-yard touchdown. It's like he didn't blow the assignment. He did about all you could ask him to do, and it still resulted in a touchdown. So feel good about him, especially if he takes the next step. Sounds like Amir Boyd Matthews was getting good reviews in spring ball. His numbers won't like wow you from UTEP. I think he actually wasn't even really entrenched as a full-time starter there. But I don't know. They clearly saw something in him in the portal window. I think they could have gotten a quote-unquote higher-rated corner if they wanted one. But so it's an interesting depth piece to me, and I think there's healthy competition among those top 4 spots. If Horn isn't getting it done, you either put Matthews ahead of him or maybe maybe you move Pollock to one side and then have the Charlotte transfer started at the other side. I don't know, but again, good problem to have, good competitive depth versus last year when you had Macho Stevenson starting the bowl game. You had him starting Big 12 games, and it clearly was not working.
Yep. All right, and the special teams real quickly. Kicker Upton Bellenfant. And then the new transfer, Ian Hershey out of Arizona State. Stone Harrington, the kickoff man. The punter, Jack Burgess. Long snapper, Rylan Vagana. Redshirt freshman, he's taking over. Kickoff return, Jacoby Williams, Micah Hudson. Huh?
Is that how that's pronounced on the long snapper?
I gave it my best shot.
Okay.
I've not heard it out loud yet.
I'm not going to say it out loud.
Yeah, Vagana. Yeah, it's a hard G. Jacoby Williams, kickoff return. Micah Hudson next. Cam Dickey, the blocker, return man. Then punt return, Jacoby Williams, Roy Alexander, Micah Hudson, McCarty, and Miles.
I'm super excited.
Yeah.
Super excited about Jacoby Williams at kickoff return. And I hope we can make a kick. I don't think fans realize how spoiled we've been with our place kicker the last several years, going back to 2019 with Trey Wolf's freshman year, and then it was Garibay for a little while, and then Trey Wolf again, then Gino. Gino had one rough game in Laramie, but besides that, you've had damn good, very reliable field goal operations.
Gino made the kick in Wyoming, and they jobbed us.
Yeah, and then he doinked one from 55 that was almost good. So on the final line, it said 2 for 5, but one was blocked, one he made, and they made him redo it. One was doinked. So all that to say, we've been very fortunate. I'm not saying it's been automatic because Garibay missed one against Baylor in 21, but you've also hit a ton of really clutch kicks in the fourth quarter and overtime that have won you several games. And I think, did the kickers go 0 for 6 in the spring game or something like that?
I don't think it's quite that bad, but yes, it was 2 for 6 at least, yeah.
Well, the Arizona State guy is 53% from inside 40 yards for his career. So I'm not confident about that. And in a close Big 12 game in November, you're going to need to make a kick in the fourth quarter that matters. And I hope we can get it done.
Position you think is the deepest, and then position you're a little bit worried about.
This I think is the deepest.
Or group, I guess.
Yeah. A little bit of a cop out, but well, I don't know. I guess quarterback, and that might seem a little bit out of left field, but you have a guy, Baron Morton, who has started probably almost 25 games in his career at the Big 12
Yes.
level. Behind him, you have a guy that I think isn't as experienced, obviously, but has the talent. He could have been, I think, the starter for a Big 12 team last year. And then their third string is a guy who also has Power 4 experience, not as much pedigree or anything like that. But if your third string quarterback is an old dude with Power 4 experience, a lot of teams are like scared to death to see quarterback 2. I think if our QB3 went out there, maybe it wouldn't look great, but I think it might be serviceable. So on offense, I'll say quarterback, close second to like interior offensive line. And then on defense, I'll say interior D line.
That's what I was gonna say. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I
Because
agree.
you
Then
got
maybe
two
after
really good
this,
starters, and then like behind them, Duda Banks was a starter last year. Guys like Cofield flashed when given the opportunity. So like, and I'm still high on that Houston transfer, blanking on his name right now, but I
Holmes.
think
Yeah,
you brought in three transfers that could do a really good job. Like you might have 6 dudes that can play one of the 2 interior D line spots.
agreed. All right. Thank you for listening. This was the first half of the episode. We're going to hit off to the mailbag now. Any final thoughts, I guess, Kyle, before we kick all these people off from YouTube and Republic of Football?
No, it's fun talking football. I guess it's that time of the off season.
That time of the year there, Kyle. All right. Appreciate it. If you want to listen to the full episode, if you want to listen to the mailbag, patreon.com/gambling gauchos. That's patreon.com/gambling gauchos. If you're on YouTube, smash that like button, hit that subscribe button. And of course, if you're listening on Republic of Football, go listen to, I don't know, the TCU people or something. Melissa's nice to me. All right. Thank you. Love y'all.